You know that situation when you step out of it, that person you get rid of, the job that you leave, and suddenly the weight of the world is off your shoulders and you think, thank God, I feel like myself again? You feel like yourself again because of what you've lost, because something that didn't belong there is gone. That's what this energy is like, and that's what this video is about. This full moon is in Ardra Nakshatra, which is in the constellation of Gemini in Vedic astrology. The energy is Rudra, storm, and Shiva, clearing energy. So this is a continuation of what we just saw in the total solar eclipse. We've been asked to look at our beliefs and look at all of the information that we're taking in and regurgitating, and what is that actually getting us? So we can fight all we want, we can think as contentiously as we want, but what is it that we're building? That was what November 30th was having us look at. November 14th, full solar eclipse, was having us look at Jeshta, having us take a higher perspective, and then Mula, looking at the roots of things. So wherever we happen to find ourselves, rather than staying the course, standing firm in wherever the hell it got us, we're looking instead at how did we get there? Why are we there? What's going on around us? Who are the people around us? Who are we surrounding ourselves with? Who is giving us a clearer picture of ourselves versus who is deluding us into believing something? Because remember, there are different ways that we can be deceived. Other people can do it intentionally, other people can misrepresent information, or we can delude ourselves. Deception comes in many different ways. But the fact is, illusion is something that is not clarity. Those are very different. So if it's not clear, it's not clear. So the ground has been kind of moving under us, and it's been this dark time where it reminds me of in Game of Thrones, the father, the Tywin Lannister. Everybody hated that man because he was so mean. He's so Capricorn because when he's making a decision for the next 3 generations. And that's what Capricorn does. So it's not anything necessarily that you like, but Capricorn needs you to get your shit together because we're making long-term decisions here. So bringing us back to the context of these moon cycles, they've been asking us to have a look around us and who we're surrounding ourselves with. What work are we doing in the world? How are we showing up each day? What are the words coming out of our mouths? What are the thought processes that we are now comfortable using? How are our friend networks? What type of personal development are we doing? How are we using our resources? How are we using ourselves as instruments of the divine? So the energy has been asking us to look clearly at things and begin to eliminate what doesn't belong on the path to our highest and best good. If we're looking to accomplish something in this life, not everything gets to stay. Now is a continuation of that with Ardra. Ardra is actually a nakshatra that is speaking for people who have been exploited. It's about directed anger. It's about directed aggression toward people who have exploited others. However you'd like to use that in your life, but consider that's the energy of right now. And so it's this clearing energy. And then in the next 2 weeks to 3 weeks, there are going to be Uranus transits, which Uranus is called the Great Awakener. And Uranus will, if anything's, Uranus will always surprise you. It's stuff that you don't ever see coming, comes out of left field, but it reconciles things that were out of alignment. It reconciles things that weren't right. So right now you have this storm energy and you have this clearing energy and you have this aggression that you have the ability to direct, and then in the next couple weeks you're still going to have things that are happening in your life. So essentially the ground is still moving, circumstances are still shifting, but now is a time when you can actually begin to take stock of who's around and what's around. One of the very prominent themes about what's been around is South Node, so things that have happened before, and Chiron, the wounded healer. These have to do a lot with our family, with our ancestry, with our roots, where we've come from, what we've learned. They're not always good things that we've learned, so they're not always good patterns that we're perpetuating. If this Christmas didn't feel amazing, that's because it was energetically, it was not necessarily a celebratory time. It was more a time when we're calmly assessing. So why does it matter what kind of person we are? Why does it matter who's around us? Why does it matter what our jobs are? Why does it matter how we speak to people? Why does it matter how we think about things? Because it does. By being yourself, and by being what you are, and by not being what you aren't, that is how you fulfill your mission in the world. That is how you fulfill your divine purpose. Do you notice each time you walk away from a situation that wasn't you, how much better you feel? You don't ever get something and say, God, now I really feel like myself. You lose something and say, wow, I feel like myself again. That process of expansion through elimination. That's the purpose of this energy. So to frame the video, in the big picture, the grand conjunction of Saturn is for the next 20 years. Jupiter is being activated in the next 3 months. And then the full moon is what's being activated now until the next 2 weeks. So that's just a short-term energetic cycle. The Jupiter is being activated from now until April, and then Saturn is a long-term transit. So I'll explain the energies, then I'll explain the readings for the individual signs, and then conclude with some thoughts on how you can work with the energy and some rituals you can do for New Year's. Last week, there was a grand conjunction between Saturn and Jupiter. And let me tell you what this means for you. First, in Vedic astrology, it happened within Capricorn, and it happened in the nakshatra called Abhijit, which is the victorious one, or the one who cannot be defeated. Now, this is a special nakshatra, and it's the 28th, and it's hidden in 2 other nakshatras. And there's a catch with this one. In order to activate the energy, one must be on a righteous path. So this is not an energy where you're going to have personal gain. Personal gain may be a byproduct of it, but Saturn, in this case, is about the masses. It's about the people. Saturn rules servants. And this energy, it wants justice for the people. So anything that you're doing has to be in alignment with a greater good, some benefit for humanity, some benefit for other people. So for example, if you're starting a business, it can be a business that also profits you, but the intention of the business, in order to use this energy, needs to be for the good of other people. Now, a little bit more about Saturn and Jupiter, what they mean. I'll give you 2 examples. I'll give you 2 examples. The first is kind of a shallow example, and then the other one is more meaningful. The shallow example is Coco Chanel, who always said, whenever you're dressed, take one element off. So what she was saying was there's greater elegance with a disciplined appearance. The second, not shallow example is Martin Luther King's letter from the Birmingham jail. If you're not familiar with that, in 1963, Martin Luther King Jr. was imprisoned for a brief period of time because of nonviolent activities. So he was constrained in jail, but what he had time to do during then, what he said, that was his best thinking probably of his life, because he was able to reevaluate all of his ideas and get very, very centered in exactly what he was doing and why. So this purpose that he felt and how he was enacting this purpose in the world, these came into alignment. And they came into alignment because everything else was constrained. He was in jail. He couldn't do anything else. So all he had was time to think. So that's the principle here. It's how simplicity yields greater elegance, and also the principle of elimination as a means for expansion. Usually when we want to get to a better place, we think of things like, what can I buy? What yoga class can I take to bring me greater peace? What can I watch? What can I learn? What can I listen to? What can I read? Usually it's about what else can I buy? This principle is saying something very different. You don't need more, you need less. You need less consumption through your ears so that your mind is clear, so that you actually have time to think. You need less consumption through your eyes, through your senses, because they all cloud you, because they all take up your energetic room, and they all divert your attention. When you are constrained, and many of us have been for a long period of time, when you are constrained, you are focused on what you're doing. Saturn is thought of in a bad way. And the thing with it, every energy is neutral. No energy is inherently, there are malefic energies and benefic energies, good and bad-ish, but essentially energy is neutral. It's just what you do with it. So for example, Saturn comes from Kronos, and Kronos came from an oppressed place, thus Kronos becomes an oppressor. There's the Greek story of Uranus, which was the sky and which was oppressing him, and how he overtook his father and then came to power and remained in power by eating his own children. That's where that saying comes from, about eating your young. Anything to keep in power. So on the one hand, you can become a slave to your schedule. Saturn rules time, its restrictions, its limitations, its parameters. And we think about that in a limiting way. It says it rules limitations. But think about this, boundaries. Which of your relationships do really well that have poor boundaries? None of them. If your nutrition had no boundaries, what would your physical body look like? Probably not great. If your day had no boundaries, your life would have no rhythm. So on one hand, we think about boundaries, we think about parameters, we think about limits in a punishing way, but actually what they do is provide us structure, right? So that's on the one hand. Now Jupiter, we think about Jupiter. Oh, it's expansion, it's exciting, it's as if that's a good thing. Zeus is Jupiter. In the Greek mythology, Zeus was known for they would say a lot of affairs, but he had a lot of sex, and he had a lot of sex with a lot of different women. And he had sex with women even though their husbands would be upset, even though it would hurt their relationships, even though they would be punished or killed. We say seduced, but really he coerced them. He would trick them. He would rape them sometimes. So it's like the sex, while it seems like a good thing, and it seems like, oh, you can have everything you want, then what kind of person are you right now? So it's the same thing, right? So you can like have sex, you can have food, even if you think about it, like if you have education or if you have religion, what happens? It's not tied to any kind of grounded parameters. So all of a sudden you become a zealot, you become self-righteous, you become somebody who is not bounded by anything, which it's nice for your imagination. But if you need to live in the real world, you need parameters. You need boundaries. So the low expression of Jupiter, again, is a zealot and is gluttonous. And then the high expression of Jupiter is guru. It's a knowledgeable self. And it's also one of self-purification. So this is what the energy is asking you to do right now. Set yourself parameters for discipline and focus. Parameters, because they prohibit some things, lend themselves to purification, because you're only focused on a few things, but you're only focused on a few things that matter. So in this way, you'll be able to advance and you'll be able to see progress through the elimination of some things. Capricorn, sun, moon, and rising. This full moon takes place in your 6th house. The 6th house rules your daily routines, your health, your coworkers, your schedule, the things you do during the day to maintain your life. 6th house is opposite to 12th house. So the way that you think about things in terms of your scheduling, say your cleaning habits, how you relate to your coworkers, how you relate to your employees, these are all the result of subconscious programming. And what this full moon is asking you to do is clear out whatever thoughts you had around that, whatever programming you had around that, because you need to clean up your 6th house. You need to clean up however it is that you're doing your daily routines. So if you don't have a schedule, maybe now you do need a schedule. Remember, we have our Saturn influence here. Jupiter is trying to expand you in your 1st house. That's your house of self. So a step you can take for your self-development right now is to examine your daily habits and how are those serving you and how are those not serving you. So if you like nice expanses of time, but they're really not being productive for you, perhaps now it is the time to arrange yourself a schedule, to arrange yourself a timeline. Maybe now it is the time to examine why you don't like to clean. What makes you not do these things? What makes you avoid these things if you don't happen to do them? On the other hand, are you a slave to your routine? And where did that thinking come from? So either way, if you're too lax in it, or if you're not at all into having routine, look at what your programming is that put you there. Clean that out. Clean that out and do it differently now, because Jupiter is trying to expand you in your 1st house. And so Capricorn is asking you to have some structure. And it's not structure for structure's sake. It's structure so that you have time, so that you have physical stamina, so that you have the elements in place that will allow you to be as productive energetically, outwardly, socially as you need to be to accomplish what it is that's on your spiritual path. I'll just show you what I'm doing for this one. First thing is can you see this? A wand. I cast a circle. So wherever I'm sitting, I clear the space energetically, but just walk around, and wands are air energy. So I just walk around the space and just cast a circle. And what that does is physically creates this space where I will be conducting my ritual. Light a candle, of course. Fires are clearing energy, and fires also help elements change forms. Take a journal. Actually, this new year, start a journal. No matter what you're doing, go get one that you like. Go get one. I have several, but I write down my dreams. I write down what's happening. You can also check where the moon cycle is, but write down what's happening, because from now until the end of the year, remember, we're in Saturn time now, so we're constricted. Watch what happens. From now until April, we have Jupiter expanding, so Saturn's asking us to focus so that we can expand. But by the end of the year, when you started your yoga practice and you weren't very good, but then you kept on with your form, after a period of time, you got much better at it. The same thing if you practice writing, you get much better at it. So it's asking us to focus and get better at something. So it will happen little by little. So for God's sake, keep a journal. And then you can see, especially with your thoughts, you can see how your thoughts advance. So for this one, I will take a piece of paper. I will use a pencil because we're working with Saturn, and Saturn has an astrological correspondence to lead. So I'll use a pencil for the lead with the Saturn. Also, because I'm working with Jupiter, Jupiter's tin, I happen to keep my cards in this, so I'll keep this one around too. Moon, by the way, is silver. So if you're working with something, you can have silver around. So what I will do is a lead pencil this time, write down what my intentions are and write down what I'm doing and what I'm going to put into this effort and what I would like help with. Then I will take it outside and I will burn it. And here's why I burn it. Intentions are in your head. They're thoughts that you have. They can be energies that you have. You write them out. That takes a different form. Written form is different than thought form. If you want to put them then into the universe, into the unseen world, burn the paper. Smoke blends in with the air. It changes forms. And also the paper turns to ash, changes forms. The ash falls to the ground and is absorbed into the earth. So at both a symbolic level and a physical level, your intentions change forms, go into the universe, and go into the earth. And that's what I will do. If you're interested, I'm curious what kind of rituals you do. And also, if you find this one helpful, leave notes in the comments what happens. The next 2 weeks is also bringing up this idea of home and what feels like home, where we feel comfortable. Now that can be physically where we feel comfortable, our physical surroundings. It can be emotionally, intellectually, energetically, where we feel comfortable. What thoughts are we comfortable being around versus what thoughts are we not comfortable being around? That has to do with the type of thinking and the type of energy that's being put out. And with that, what kind of people, who are we comfortable around? One of the major points of the South Node is past life, karma, things that you're coming into realization about now, abilities that you're coming into realization about, you being able to activate your personal power, and also patterns from the past, patterns that repeat themselves and impede on your personal power and impede on your ability to achieve your very best and do what you're trying to do in this world spiritually. If you are a person who is constantly looking to advance, what doesn't occur to you is that not everybody else is looking to advance. You imagine everybody to be as, spiritually ambitious. That's not the right word, but you imagine everybody to be as motivated as you are just because you are, and that's how you think. And that's one of the very difficult lessons of right now, is that not everybody is looking to achieve what you're looking to achieve. Not everybody is on the path that you are on. And while that's okay, because everybody's allowed to have their own path, what it does mean is that when you get to certain places, energetically, you are no longer a match for people who are not in those places, to the point where it becomes physically uncomfortable being around them. Now, from a 3D perspective, like from a conflict perspective, somebody would be observing and say, oh, there's nothing going wrong there. Nobody said anything. There's no overt hostility. Everything seems to be okay, as if you were just looking at it, observing it. However, if you're a person who is highly sensitive to energy, if you've been working on yourself and you've been clearing out what blocks aren't there, your bad patterning, the behaviors that stand in your way, if you're a person who's been doing your inner work, the people who haven't been doing their inner work, it comes to a point where you no longer fit in the room with their energy. You've heard the saying, love and fear, two different energies, cannot exist in the same space. it becomes like that with people. So if you find yourself in these coming weeks, and if it happened to be like that over the holiday season, where it was just really awkward being in the room with people, it can go anywhere from a little bit awkward to grossly uncomfortable to where you're actually physically sick. Maybe you're having nightmares before you go. Maybe you're having bad dreams. Maybe you're shaking. People have very adverse physical reactions to this, and it's because the energetics are so mismatched. There's no way to reconcile it, but it's a tricky thing to say without it sounding like there's ego attached to it. It's just really uncomfortable, really uncomfortable. And so that could be something that you've been facing in these past couple weeks, and it's probably not going away. But what this full moon is going to be doing is illuminating those areas even more. The things which are no longer energetic matches for you. So the things that no longer belong in your life. And it's not a hard thing to let them go because they're just so uncomfortable to be there anymore that they'll just go. But the full moon will illuminate them for you.